My dad skipped my wedding. 3 years of silence. We need to talk. I walked in that night with the one thing he never expected. Would you have sat at that table, smiled at everyone, and acted like nothing happened? Or would you have left him waiting just to see if he'd finally notice you were gone? My name is Julia Chen. 3 years ago, I married Sam. It was a small ceremony, the north edge of Lake Michigan. There were maybe 40 guests, mostly my friends and a few of Sam's cousins. My mother flew in from Vancouver. My father, Raymond Chen, RSVP'd yes. His name was on the printed cards. He never showed. No call. No text. At the reception, people asked where he was. I shrugged, said he must have been delayed. My brother Eric said nothing, just looked at his phone. There was always some reason with my father. Missed birthdays, missed graduations, missed everything. I stopped asking why. After that, I focused on work. I'd already put in 10 years on the hotel by the river. I started managing it at 27, after the previous owner retired. I learned how to read a balance sheet, how to negotiate with vendors, how to fire someone without anger. I worked late, sometimes slept in the office. I missed dinners with Sam. The hotel grew. We opened a second location, then 5. When Forbes put my name on their list, my father texted. "Congratulations," he wrote. That was the first time I'd heard from him in 2 years. The hotel lobby always smells like fresh lilies. I make sure of it. The front desk is polished, the staff's uniforms pressed. I walk through every morning, checking the corners, the lighting, the way the sun falls through the glass. Guests nod, staff smiles. Some days I feel invisible. Other days, I see my reflection in the brass elevator doors and wonder how I got here. There's a photo of my wedding day by my office desk. Sam and I are laughing. My father isn't in the picture. My brother is, standing off to the side, hands in his pockets. My father always called him the heir. Even when Eric was failing classes, skipping shifts, showing up late to family dinners, my father talked about passing things on to him. I thought it didn't matter. I thought I made my own life. Then my father called again. And I knew it wasn't congratulations. Dad waited until the soup bowls were cleared. The table was too polished, and the chandelier above us was too bright. I could see every line in the wood, every scratch I hadn't noticed before. My mother was fussing with her napkin. My brother Eric had his phone face down beside his fork. Dad said, "Julia, we need to discuss the family trust and the business." I nodded, waiting. He slid a stack of papers toward me, slow and careful, like he was making a chess move. The top page had my hotel's logo on it. The colors were wrong washed out, like they'd been copied too many times. "You'll want to sign this before the press gets ahead of us," he said. I looked at the document. My name. His name. Legal language. My company's name, again and again. It said transfer of controlling interest. I didn't pick it up. I could feel my hand resting on the table, steady. I built the hotel myself. Dad gave me the land as a birthday present when I turned 27, but everything after that was mine. The loans, the sleepless nights, the first guests, the staff. Dee said, "You're the only one in this family who knows hard work." Now he was sitting across from me, acting like it had always belonged to him. Eric leaned forward. He didn't look at me. Dad said, "There are rumors going around. About the business. About you. It'll look better if you sign now. We keep things in the family. We protect ourselves." I glanced at my mother. She wouldn't meet my eyes. She folded her napkin again, then unfolded it. "What rumors?" I said. Dad smiled, like he was tired. "There's talk about some money missing. Some staff saying things." You know how these things go. I shook my head. I asked him if he'd called the accountant or the manager. I said, if you think money's missing, why didn't you come to me? He shrugged. It's not personal. It's business. We need to make sure the family is protected, Julia. Eric finally spoke. This is the best way, he said. For everyone. I sat back. I could feel the edge of the chair pressing against my spine. My mother's hands were shaking, just a little. She caught me looking and set her napkin down. I said, I'm not signing anything tonight. Dad's face changed for half a second. Then he nodded, as if he'd expected it. He said, I hope you'll think about what's at stake. This isn't just about you. He pushed his chair back and stood up. Eric followed him, not looking at me. My mother stayed seated, staring at the table. I ran my finger over the hotel logo on the paper. It felt thin, almost like tissue. I left the document where it was and got up, walking out of the dining room without saying anything. I heard my father's voice in the hallway, low and sharp, but I didn't catch the words. Upstairs, I washed my face in the guest bathroom. The water was too cold. I looked at myself in the mirror for a long time. My hands were steady. My stomach felt like it was made of stone. Downstairs, the table was silent. The paper was still there. The room smelled like lemon polish and old. I closed the door behind me, quiet. The house had never felt so small. The silence lasted longer than it should have. I let my eyes move from my dad to Eric, then to my mom, who was still focused on the spots she'd missed on the kitchen counter. My hands were flat on the table. I tried to steady my voice. Why now? Eric answered before anyone else could. He sat straighter, looking at me like he was bored but pretending to be concerned. Family should stick together, especially when there's real money involved. He said it like he was reading a headline, not talking about my life. Mom finally stood still, the rag clenched in her fist. She didn't look at anyone. Dad cleared his throat. You wouldn't have the capital to start without my contacts. It was the same tone he used when I was 12 and wanted to change schools. Like logic settled things. I stared at him. You didn't even come to my wedding. Why is this your business? He leaned back, folding his arms. His face didn't move. Let's not make this emotional, Julia. It's just business. The clock on the wall clicked. Eric's watch vibrated. No one said anything. The air in the room felt cold, like someone had opened a door in winter. I heard the dog scratching at the back door, but nobody moved to let him in. I was waiting for my mom to say something. She just looked at the floor. Her shoulders were tight, like she was bracing for a blow. I wondered if she'd known this was coming, or if she was as blindsided as I felt. Eric reached for the folder on the table, flipping it open so the papers fanned out. There are some preliminary documents here, he said. Just to formalize things. His voice was soft, like he didn't want to wake a sleeping child. I didn't touch the papers. I watched his hand. His wedding ring was gone. He used to fidget with it when he was nervous. Now he just tapped the table, waiting. Dad cleared his throat again. You're smart, Julia. You know how this works. We help you. You help us. His eyes didn't meet mine. He was looking just past me, like he was talking to the wall behind my head. There was a faint buzzing in my ears. I kept my voice steady. What does help mean? What do you want? Eric smiled. Just a seat at the table. Some oversight. It's not much to ask, given the investment. I said, I don't want partners. I never did. Dad's voice was flat. You don't get to choose your family. He was still leaning back, arms crossed, like this was a meeting and not a kitchen table in the house I grew up in. I realized he hadn't looked at my mom once. Mom finally spoke, but her words were small. Maybe we could talk about this another time. Julia's tired. It's been a long week. Eric shook his head. We're here now. No sense dragging it out. I looked at the folder. Typed names, blank signature lines. I thought about all the times I'd tried to get them to come to my art shows, and they were always busy. Now there was money, and they were all in. Dad pushed the folder closer. We'll leave this here. Look it over. Let us know. I didn't touch it. The silence was worse now. Dad stood up. I'll get the car started, he said to no one in particular, and walked out. Eric followed, picking up his jacket. He didn't look at me. Mom stood by the sink, shoulders hunched. I heard the front door open, then close. The clock kept ticking. I sat alone at the table, the folder untouched, the dog still scratching outside. I didn't move. The air in the kitchen felt heavy, like something you couldn't scrub away. Eric waited until everyone else had drifted off. I stood in the kitchen, running water over our plates. He hovered in the doorway, hands stuffed in his pockets. For a moment, he said nothing. Then, in a slow voice, he asked if I had a minute. I nodded. He motioned for me to follow him to the den. It was quieter there. The only light came from the old floor lamp in the corner. Eric sat down at the edge of the leather sofa, not leaning back. He looked at me, then at the coffee table. He picked up a manila envelope, thick with papers, and slid it toward me. I waited for him to explain. He scratched his cheek, avoiding my eyes. You should see this, he said. The envelope was heavier than I expected. I opened it and pulled out a stack of printed emails. The headers caught my attention first. My father's email, several messages back and forth with 3 different people from a venture capital group I'd heard of. The dates stopped me, August, September, October. All before I'd closed my first investment round, the one Dad had helped me with. I scanned the first page. Subject, Julia's expansion terms for partial acquisition. My name spelled out. Details about my platform, financials, user growth. My father's words, she's ambitious but green, could be open to guidance. Another, if we position the offer as support, she'll see it as a win-win. I held the page by the corner, careful not to crease it. My stomach felt cold. Eric watched me read. He didn't say anything for a long time. I flipped to another thread. We're prepared to negotiate on her behalf, my father had written. She trusts me implicitly. Let's discuss percentage splits offline. I stopped reading. The silence in the room changed. I put the papers back on the table and looked at Eric. He looked tired, older than usual. Where did you get these? I asked. He said he'd found them on Dad's printer, not hidden or locked away. He'd copied them, unsure what to do. He said he wanted me to know, because I deserved to see it. My mind ran through every conversation I'd had with my father about the company. Every suggestion he'd made, every time he'd urged me to think bigger or bring in partners. I thought of the nights he'd called me after midnight with new ideas. The way he'd insisted on being copied on emails to investors. I remembered feeling grateful, thinking he was proud of me. I asked Eric if he'd told anyone. He shook his head. Not yet, he said. He wasn't sure he should have shown me, but he couldn't keep it to himself. I folded my hands, pressing them flat on my knees. The air felt thick. I asked how far it had gone. Eric shrugged. He didn't know if any deals had closed. The emails stopped after November, around the time I landed my first round. Maybe the VCs lost interest, or maybe Dad dropped it. He wasn't sure. I picked up the envelope again. I said quietly that this was why Dad had wanted to help, Not out of family loyalty. Not because he believed in me. Because he wanted a piece of something he could control. Eric nodded. He seemed relieved I'd said it out loud. I put the envelope in my bag. I didn't thank him. I didn't say anything else. I left the den and walked upstairs, each step louder than normal. I heard Eric's voice low behind me. Let me know if you want to talk. I closed my bedroom door and sat on the edge of the bed, the envelope on my lap. I stayed there a long time, listening to the house settle. I thought about every time I'd called my father for advice. Every time I'd invited him. I didn't cry. I waited for morning. The door closed behind me with a solid click. I slipped off my shoes, set them neatly by the bed, and walked straight to the desk. I didn't bother turning on the TV. The light from the window was weak, but it was enough. The folder sat on my bag, right where I'd left it. I opened my laptop and started pulling up files. My inbox was full of old threads, some marked, some with attachments I hadn't looked at in years. I scrolled back, searching for the first confirmation email. The subject line was short, funds received. I opened it, checked the date. February 14th, 2 years ago. I printed it. The printer whined, slow but steady. I kept going. The wire transfer notice from the bank, the email chain with the lawyer, the PDF of my term sheet. I printed every page, one at a time, stacking them in order. I found the original spreadsheet I'd used to track expenses. My name in the header, Dad's in the CC field only. No signature, no initials, just a note from him. Let me know when you're ready to review. I printed that too. Someone downstairs slammed a door. I heard a faint voice in the hallway, then silence again. The hum of the printer filled the room, steady and mechanical. My hands were calm as I reached for the highlighter. I uncapped it, the smell sharp and familiar, and drew a careful line under the transfer amounts. My name, my account. I highlighted the lawyer's reply, beneficial owner, MS. Kelsey. I kept my lines straight, no overlap. I never liked messy notes. I stopped for a moment and looked out the window. The city below was gray, cars crawling along the street. I thought about calling Dad. I could have told him to come up, that I wanted to talk. Instead, I went back to the stack of paper. I wrote a sticky note for each section. Wire transfer documentation, original term sheet, ownership confirmation. I stuck them to the divider tabs and pressed them in place. The phone in the room blinked with a missed call. I didn't check who it was. I closed each file on my laptop, then shut it down. I worked slowly, methodically, sliding every sheet into a clear sleeve. The binder grew thicker as I added page after page, the plastic covers smooth and cold. When I finished, I set the binder upright on the table and flipped through it from front to back. Every page was in the right order. Nothing missing. I sat down at the desk and rested my hands flat on the wood. I listened to the printer cooling, the faint crackle as the last page settled. I thought about how quiet the room was. There was a comfort in the silence. I didn't feel angry, not even tired. Just a sense of waiting. I could see the next step, clear and practical. If he wanted to make this about paperwork, I had the paperwork. I put the cap back on the highlighter and set it on the edge of the desk. I stacked the leftover papers, filed away the extras. I checked my phone, but didn't open any messages. There was nothing urgent. I slid the binder into my tote bag and zipped it closed. I walked to the bathroom, washed my hands, and dried them on the hotel towel. My reflection in the mirror looked the same as always. I tucked a strand of hair behind my ear and went back to the desk. The binder was waiting. I sat down again, this time with the chair facing the window. I watched the city for a while, my hands flat on the cool table. The facts were lined up, silent and solid. If Dad wanted to push, I was ready to push back. I just sat there, looking out at the street, the binder heavy in my bag. MS. Patel's office was always too cold. I sat across from her, arms folded, with a stack of folders in my lap. I took a breath and started laying everything out, one piece at a time. Printed emails, some from Eric, some from Dad's attorney. My own spreadsheets. The signed letter from my investor, with the blue notary stamp at the bottom. MS. Patel didn't say anything for a while. She read through the emails, lips pressed tight. I watched her finger trace the header, the date, the CC list. Her office was full of quiet, the hum of a desktop, the faint traffic outside. I kept my hands on the table so she wouldn't see them shake. Eric's email was on top. I'd printed it out that morning. Just a heads up, your dad's asking about your earliest funding rounds. I forwarded the docs you sent me. Hope that's okay. I'd only replied thanks. MS. Patel set the email aside. She picked up my spreadsheet, checked the numbers, then picked up the letter from my old investor. She read it twice. She finally looked at me. He's trying to retroactively claim a controlling interest, she said. Her voice was flat, bored, like she was reading a menu. But you've got the paper trail, she added. The corners of her mouth didn't move. I nodded. My throat hurt for some reason. I pointed at the stack of emails. He's never even been on the board, I said. I paid him back with interest after the Series A. He just wants to I didn't finish. She slid another sheet across the table. It was an email, printed in color. I recognized the format. My father's attorney, too, 08 a.m. Subject, notice of intent. The text was only a few lines. We are prepared to pursue legal action if our client's interests are not recognized. We encourage a prompt and amicable resolution. MS. Patel waited. I read the email twice. I saw the timestamp. I wondered if Dad had even slept that night, or if he dictated it over the phone. My hands stayed flat on the table. He's bluffing, MS. Patel said. But he's not stupid. He'll drag this out if you let him. She tapped the investor letter. This is airtight. Don't answer his lawyer directly, she said. Let me handle it. Her voice was low, almost tired. She'd seen this before. I nodded again. My anger felt different now. It wasn't the same as when I'd read that first email. It was cold under my skin, like something chemical. I looked at the pile of documents. I thought about all the times I'd tried to explain my work to my father, how he'd smiled and nodded, and then changed the subject. I remembered the first time he'd loaned me money $25,000, 3 years ago. He'd put the check on the kitchen counter while I was making coffee. No contract, just a post-it note that said family helps family. I'd paid him back in full. He'd never let me forget it. MS. Patel gathered the papers into a neat pile. She clipped them together. We'll draft a response, she said. I'll CC you. Don't reply to anything else from him or his attorney. Don't talk to Eric about it. If anyone calls you, forward it to me. She paused. You're going to need to be patient, she said. They want you to panic. I didn't say anything. I looked at the window behind her, the gray city sky. I tried to imagine what my father would say if he saw me sitting here, quiet, not arguing, not yelling. I tried to picture him reading my investor's letter, realizing I'd planned ahead. I wondered if he'd be angry or just bored. MS. Patel stood up. She held out her hand for the investor letter. I slid it to her. She gave me a copy of the email. She said, "You have nothing to hide." I nodded. My anger felt smaller, but sharper. I picked up my bag and stood. As I left, I saw my reflection in the glass door. I looked tired but not scared. Not anymore. I sat on the edge of my bed, phone in hand, staring at Eric's name on the screen. I waited until I felt nothing, then hit call. He answered on the second ring. Yeah. His voice sounded normal, like this was any other day, but I kept mine flat. Why did you give me those emails? There was a pause, the kind that tells you someone is thinking about how much to admit. He started with a sigh. Look, Dad said he'd put me on the board if I kept quiet. I waited. But I can't let him screw you, he said, voice low. So you're in on it. He didn't deny it. I'm not, I didn't plan any of it. He trailed off. I heard him breathing, short and nervous. You knew, I said. I knew, he said. I kept telling myself it wasn't my problem. You sent them to me. Yeah. I thought. He stopped. I thought you deserved to know, Eric said. I leaned against the headboard, trying to picture his face, but it was blurry. If you want a future with this company, you'll testify about the emails, I said. He was silent. I waited. Eric. I could hear something in the background, maybe a door closing. He didn't hang up. Why do you want me to do that? He said, almost whispering. Because if you don't, Dad wins. He gets away with all of it, I said. He's my father. And you're my brother. He didn't say anything. I could hear a faint hum, maybe the fridge behind him, maybe traffic outside his apartment. He finally spoke. I didn't mean for it to get this far, he said. But it did. I know. You have to decide. He let out a small laugh, the kind people make when they're trapped. I never should have taken his offer. But you did. I know. I told him I'd call him again tomorrow. He didn't protest. I ended the call. Afterward, I stared at the phone, my hand stiff. I tried to remember the last time Eric, and I spoke without something hanging between us. For a minute, I thought about deleting his number. I looked at the copy of the emails, still unread in my inbox. I opened the folder, scrolled through the subject lines. Board reshuffle. Consultant contract. Eric CC'd on every message, silent, present. He had always been there, just quiet enough to go unnoticed. Now he was somewhere in the middle, not loyal to Dad, not entirely with me. I realized that was its own kind of answer. I put the phone down and sat in the dark, feeling the shape of the shift. It wasn't victory, but it wasn't defeat either. Eric hadn't chosen a side, but he hadn't run. I knew what that meant. He was waiting to see who would win. I could live with that. For now. Eric showed up late to dinner. He stood in the hallway for a minute, coat still on, and I could see his jaw working. He didn't meet anyone's eyes. There was soup on the table, and Mom had set out the good plates, even though no one felt like eating much these days. Dad filled his wine glass and started the same speech he'd given every Sunday since everything blew up, about family and forgiveness, about how these things happen. Eric dropped his backpack on the floor. He slid into the chair next to me, hands flat on the table. He looked thinner than usual and tired. Dad cleared his throat. Let's just eat, Dad said. We're all here, finally. Eric looked straight at him. Julia built this. You had nothing to do with it. Silence. My mother's fork clattered. Dad's face went still. He glanced at me, then back at Eric. What are you talking about, Eric? Eric didn't answer right away. He took his phone out, laid it on the table like a card. He tapped once and turned up the volume. The voice on the recording was Dad's, but rougher, like he'd been drinking. If you get her to sign those papers, you'll get your cut. Don't screw it up, all right? I want this finished. My mother put her hand to her mouth. The words hung over the table. No one moved. Eric's thumb hovered, ready to stop the playback, but he let it run until Dad's voice trailed off. Dad's mouth opened. I saw the moment he realized he'd been caught. He tried to say something, but nothing came out. Is that what you wanted, Dad? Eric was staring at him, eyes red. You wanted to sell her out, just like that. Mom started to cry. Not loud, just the kind of crying where the shoulders shake and nothing comes out but air. Dad looked at her, then at me. His face was hard, like he was holding something in. His voice was cold. That's not what happened, he said. You don't know the whole story. I do now, Eric said. He shoved the phone toward Dad, as if daring him to deny it. No one ate. The soup cooled on the table. The only sound was Mom's breathing and the faint hum of the fridge. I waited to see if Dad would lie again. He looked at me, but I didn't give him anything. Eric stood up, pulled his chair back with a scrape. He looked at Mom, then at me. I'm sorry, he said. This should have come out sooner. Dad tried again. Julia, listen. I did what I had to do for the family. Eric cut him off. He walked out, leaving the phone on the table. The screen was still lit up with Dad's contact name. Dad stared at it like it might explode. Mom wiped her eyes, shaking. I stayed quiet, watching Dad. He looked smaller, somehow. He didn't say anything else. The dinner ended without anyone eating. No one touched the plates. The house felt colder on the way out, as if the air shifted after the truth. The penthouse conference room always felt cold, even with the sunlight pushing through the high windows. I arrived early, carrying the black binder in one hand and a stack of legal folders in the other. The lawyer met me at the elevator. She smiled, but it was a business smile, thin and quick. I nodded and let her lead. The table was already set up with water, coffee, and a tray of stale pastries. I set the binder down in front of my seat. For 10 minutes, we sat in silence. My lawyer checked her phone. I watched the city shrink and shift below the glass. Eric came in next, flanked by two of his friends from the board. Both looked tired. Eric's jaw was set. He didn't look at me. The others followed, 6 in all, most of them older, all of them here for the same reason. No one asked about the agenda. They knew. My lawyer stood. She opened her folder. Good morning. We're here to address the recent claims of mismanagement and the request to review executive control, she said. Eric shifted in his seat. I pushed the stack of folders into the center of the table. One for each board member. She continued. My client has prepared documentation regarding all recent transactions, communications, and personnel decisions. You'll find detailed records in your folders. I heard paper sliding and a few quiet sighs as they flipped the covers. I stayed silent. My lawyer's voice was steady. She clicked her pen against the table. We have also obtained a recording relevant to the board's interests. I reached into the binder and pulled out a USB drive. My hand was steady. I slid it across the table to the head of the board. Would you like to play it now or review it in private? She asked. The chairman looked at Eric. No answer. He plugged it into the laptop at the end of the table. The speakers were small, but the audio was clear. Eric's voice filled the room. I don't care what she says. Just stall her. Once I get the vote, she's out. We'll call it a compliance issue. The board doesn't have to know. I'll handle it. No one spoke during the playback. Someone coughed. The chairman's fingers tapped against his glass. My lawyer waited for the clip to finish. She closed her folder. As you can see, there is intent to mislead the board and circumvent established protocols. In addition, We have prepared a motion to block any hostile action pending review of these materials. She handed another stack of papers to the chairman. Copies for everyone. Eric stared at the table. He didn't say a word. One of his friends looked at him, then back at the binder. Someone shifted in their chair. The chairman set his jaw. "We'll need time to review," he said. "Take all the time you need," I said. My voice sounded like someone else's, quiet, flat. I folded my hands in my lap. My lawyer nodded. "We request that all board actions be frozen until this matter is resolved." The chairman agreed. Meeting adjourned. Eric stood up fast, knocking his chair back. He left without looking at anyone. His friends followed. When the door shut, the room stayed quiet. My lawyer looked at me. "Good job," she said. I nodded. I pushed the binder back into my bag. The city looked different from up here. The water was still, the traffic moving slow. I didn't want the pastries. I didn't want the coffee. We walked back to the elevator. No one spoke. I watched the numbers light up and fade as we dropped floor by floor, the quiet filling everything between us. The attorney walked in without knocking. He paused at the door, holding a letter in a thick envelope. The boardroom was too quiet. I could smell the coffee cooling in untouched cups. Dad didn't look up from his phone until the attorney said his name. "Mr. Chen, I have a letter for you. It's from our firm." Dad reached for it, slow. His hand shook, but only a little. I watched the attorney's face. He didn't blink. He didn't smile. He laid the envelope on the table and slid it across, 2 fingers on the corner. Dad stared at it for 3 full breaths. The board members shifted. One of them coughed into his sleeve. I kept my eyes on the attorney. "Mr. Chen," the attorney said again, his voice flat. "My client is withdrawing his claim." There was no ceremony to it. He might have been reading a grocery list. "The letter is for your records," he added and stepped back, hands behind his back. Nobody said anything. Dad's lawyer, sitting next to him, glanced at the board, then at me. I didn't move. Dad peeled the envelope open and pulled out a single sheet. He read it, mouth a tight line. I could see his eyes tracking the words, line by line, slower near the end. Across the table, the board members shifted in their seats. The chairwoman cleared her throat. She looked at Dad, then at the attorney, then at me. Her fingers tapped the table. I could hear someone breathing, sharp and shallow. Dad put the letter down, face closed. The chairwoman reached for the stack of board minutes in front of her. She slid them to the middle of the table. "These are the records you requested, Mr. Chen," she said. "If you want to review them." Dad took the folder. He didn't thank her. He opened the first page, scanned it, then turned it. His name wasn't on the top. It wasn't on the next page either. I knew it wouldn't be. He turned another, then another, faster now. I watched his finger trace the lines, searching for something that wasn't there. No one met his eyes. The attorney stared at a spot on the wall. The board members looked at their hands, their notes, anywhere but Dad. Even his lawyer didn't look at him. I could hear the sound of paper against paper as Dad flipped the minutes. The pile grew smaller. Still nothing. After the last page, Dad let the folder fall shut. It made a dull sound on the table. For a second, nobody moved. I set my pen down, careful not to make noise. "Thank you for your time," I said to the attorney. My voice sounded too loud. He nodded, once. The board chair nodded back, still not meeting my eyes. I stood. My chair scraped the floor. I waited a second, looking at my father. He didn't look at me. He stared at the folder, jaw clenched. I picked up my bag. I didn't hurry. I walked to the door, opened it, and stepped into the hall. The door clicked shut behind me. For a moment, all I heard was the sound of my shoes on the tile. I kept walking, not looking back. In my pocket, my fingers curled around my phone. I kept walking until the sound of voices faded behind the closed door. The headline landed early in the morning. I hadn't slept much. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, and I saw the name of the publication before I saw the words. Hotel Heiress fends off family takeover. They used a photo from last year's conference, one where I looked overexposed and tired, chin up, eyes a little red. I didn't read the article. I watched the screen fill with notifications, one after another, until it was just a wall of preview texts and email subject lines. The first messages were from people who'd seen the news before me. Old board members. Distant cousins. A few friends I hadn't heard from since college. I opened some. Congratulations, you deserve it. Glad you stood up for yourself. A couple were more blunt, guess you won, huh? Some just wanted details. Are you okay? What happened with your parents? I didn't answer. I sat on the edge of the bed and scrolled, letting the phone heat up in my palm. It felt like a fever, like it was part of my body. Eric's message came through around 7:15. I saw his name, stared at it for long enough that the screen dimmed twice, and then locked. When I finally opened it, there were only 2 words: I'm sorry. I didn't write back. I deleted the thread, then let myself think about it for a minute. The way he'd looked at me in the conference room, how he'd avoided my eyes the next day. He never tried to call. At 7:30, Mom's name flashed up. Voicemail. I let it go, then listened to it a few minutes later, holding the phone away from my ear. Her voice was tight, like she was trying not to cry or maybe just trying to sound polished. I hope you can forgive us someday, she said. We were only trying to do what was best for the family. I wish you, Dee called me back. I love you, sweetheart. There was a pause, then a click. Dad didn't call. He didn't text. I checked my email twice, just to be sure. Nothing from him. By 9, the office line started ringing. 2 investors, then 3, then more. Some wanted reassurance, others just wanted to hear my voice. I closed my eyes while speaking to the first one. Yes, I have control of the board. Yes, the hotel is stable. Yes, we're moving forward. Most of them seemed relieved. One said, we were worried for a minute there. Another said, I always knew you'd come out on top. Their voices sounded different, lighter, less cautious. I could tell they'd already decided which side they were on. I set the phone down after each call, let the silence gather around me. Office staff walked by the open door more often than usual. A few offered me looks, some curious, some half smiling, like they wanted to say something but didn't know how close they were allowed to stand. I checked the hotel's social accounts. There were a few comments, nothing sharp or cruel. Just people asking if the rumors were true, if the family was splitting up, if the hotel was changing hands. I closed the browser before I could read more. By noon, the pressure in my chest had settled into something dull. I didn't feel triumphant. It was quiet, almost like the air after a storm. I went to the break room, made coffee, poured the whole cup down the sink when I realized I wasn't going to drink it. On the way back to my office, I passed Eric's old office. The door was open, but the lights were off. His things were gone. There was a mark on the desk where his stapler used to sit. When I got back to my desk, the only thing on the screen was my calendar. I stared at it, then at the list of messages, the unread emails, the blinking voicemail icon. I didn't open any of them. I let them pile up, one after another, until the only sound in the room was the faint buzz of my phone, vibrating against the wood. The forwarded email arrived on a Wednesday morning. I clicked it open. The first thing I saw was Dad's name. He'd sent a proposal to a director at Meridian Hotels, which was the chain we'd lost the big contract to last quarter. His email was short, almost casual. He offered exclusive insights into competitor operations and staff weaknesses, promising he could streamline their hiring pipeline for a fixed consulting fee. The language was almost identical to what he'd once bragged about in our kitchen. Except now, he was selling it to the people who'd beaten us. He included his LinkedIn and a list of key personnel he could reach. Below that, the Meridian director's reply was clipped and formal. They thanked him for his interest, but said they had strict compliance rules about proprietary information. The next line was bolder. "Your daughter is known to us. We are forwarding this correspondence to her office." There were more replies, CC'd to my own CEO, to legal, to HR. No one said anything dramatic. It was just facts. Dad's approach, his claims, the clear conflict of interest. Meridian declined to meet. My company's legal team added that they'd already cut all ties with him. The HR director wrote that his vendor status was revoked, effective immediately, and that a note would be circulated to our regional offices. I sat back and reread the thread. It wasn't even anger that I felt. It was the sense of watching something collapse from a distance, nothing left to intervene for. There weren't any accusations or insults. Just a list of dates, contacts, and the silent understanding that his reputation was over, at least in our part of the industry. Meridian and my own company were rivals, but the same names moved between them. Word would spread quietly. Later that day, I went to the break room for coffee. My department manager was there, scrolling through emails. She looked up, nodded. I could tell she'd seen the thread. She didn't ask about Dad. She just offered the sugar and went back to her phone. At noon, HR messaged again. My brother's application for the management trainee program had come through. I'd asked them to put him through the regular process. No shortcuts, no special interview. He passed the basic screening. HR asked if I wanted to approve his assignment. I said yes, but only as a junior analyst, entry level, under my own department supervisor. He would get the same starting salary as anyone else. No extra privileges, no family name attached. I wrote the reply myself, CCing my brother. He'd have to show up for orientation next week, just like everyone else. It was short. Thanks for this. I'll work hard. I replied, you know the rules. He just sent a thumbs up. At home, I checked my own email again. There was a message from Dad. He didn't mention Meridian. He didn't mention my brother's new job. He just sent a link to an article about hotel industry trends with a note. Thought you'd find this interesting. No sign he knew what had happened. Or maybe he did, but wouldn't give me the satisfaction of a real response. The next morning, I saw a notice in my company's staff portal. It was a quiet update, just a line in the vendor section. Effective immediately, the following consultant will no longer be affiliated with our company. His name was there. No one said anything else. There weren't any whispers in the hallway. People moved on. When I left my office that evening, the sky was clear. I walked past the empty parking lot, keys in hand. For the first time in weeks, no one called after me. No one asked about family. I got in my car, turned the engine, and drove home without thinking about what to say next. I sat on my bed with my phone in my hand. Dad's name was still near the top of my contacts. I stared at it for a while, thumb hovering over the screen. No new messages. Not since the last, short one, a single line, nothing more. I opened the settings, scrolled to Do Not Disturb, and tapped the switch. His name faded into gray under the list. It felt quiet, not final. I set the phone down and went to the window. The city lights looked cold and neat. I could hear faint voices from the hallway, my staff, laughing about something, plates clinking. It was early evening. The restaurant downstairs was closed for a private event. I'd sent out the invitations myself, just the people who stood by me. No family. No old friends who'd picked sides. Only my staff, the ones who helped get everything back on its feet, who'd shown up on days when it felt pointless, who'd worked double shifts without complaint. I wore a dark dress, plain, with a jacket I almost never put on. My shoes felt too tight. I left my phone face down on the desk and locked the door behind me. Downstairs, the private dining room was already half full. My pastry chef, Anna, was arranging tiny desserts on a platter. The new bar manager, Raj, poured sparkling water into tall glasses. Someone had put on a playlist quiet jazz, nothing sentimental. The tables were set with white linen and cheap candles. It was the first time since the reopening that it felt like the place was mine again. People greeted me as I came in. There was a joke about my jacket. Anna handed me a glass of wine. For a minute, I just stood in the corner and watched them talk. No one asked about my family. No one joked about the old days. We talked about bookings, a new menu idea, how the AC was finally working. Dinner was simple pasta, roast chicken, salad. I ate slowly, listening as people swapped stories about the worst customers, the best tips, the time a freezer broke and everyone had to cook everything at once. Someone toasted to making it this far. I let the conversation drift. The room felt steady, the kind of steady I hadn't felt in months. When the plates were cleared and dessert was set out, I stood up. I didn't have a speech written. I didn't want one. I just picked up my glass and waited for the noise to quiet. People looked up expectant. I said, "Thanks for coming and for sticking around. This place wouldn't exist without you." I paused. I looked at the walls, the cheap flowers in the vases, the scuffed floor. I said, "Here, to building something with your own hands. To knowing what you have because you earned it." The toast was quiet. A few people clinked glasses. Anna grinned at me. Someone said, "Cheers." I sat down. No one made a big deal. The music played on. Some people went back for more cake. Later, I washed my hands in the staff bathroom and caught my reflection in the mirror. There were lines I hadn't noticed before. I washed my face and pressed my palms to the cool sink. My phone was still upstairs, silent. I didn't feel much of anything, just a kind of finishedness, like closing a door behind you at night. I dried my hands and went back out. The laughter was softer now. I joined in, telling a story about a bridezilla who once tried to rearrange all the tables. Someone laughed so hard they choked on a strawberry. At the end of the night, when the last plates were cleared and people put on their jackets, I said goodnight to each of them at the door. No one lingered. No one asked about tomorrow. I turned off the lights and stood in the quiet room. It was mine again. It was enough. The paperwork went through the next Tuesday. I sat in the lawyer's office, read every page twice, and signed where he pointed. A copy went to my father's attorney, one to the court, and one to me. It was a permanent no-contact order, both business and personal. My father would never be allowed near the board, my properties, or my home. Dee tried to call me after the court hearing, but I never picked up. After that, he used my brother emails, texts, little messages asking for a meeting or a favor. I answered every one with the same line. "This is your legal warning. Do not contact me again." Eventually, it stopped. The press lost interest after my father's public apology. He'd read it from a statement, voice flat, eyes on the paper. He admitted to falsifying documents and misappropriating funds. I didn't attend the press conference. My brother did, sitting 2 seats away from him, looking like he hadn't slept in days. Afterward, reporters called my office for a statement. I sent a single sentence to every outlet: the company is moving forward under new leadership, and all legal matters have been resolved. That was it. The first board meeting without my father was quiet. My brother walked in, looked at me and nodded. He took his seat, kept his head down, and spoke only when asked. The other directors watched him, watched me, and then we started the agenda. No one asked about my father. Business moved on. I walked through the lobby of my hotel that night, looked at the polished floors and the familiar faces behind the front desk. No one said anything about the news. The silence felt clean. I went home, locked the door, and slept for 12 hours straight. 6 months have gone by. I wake up at 8 now, not 4. No more checking for new emails before I even get out of bed. The hotel chain signed its first overseas deal last week: London, a mid-market property in Islington, not flashy but profitable. I flew there alone, signed the contracts, took the train back to the airport, and watched the city through the window. Nobody asked about my family. Nobody mentioned my last name except the lawyer, who pronounced it wrong and didn't care. A card arrived the day after I got home. My mother's, handwriting on the envelope. Inside, there was no note, just a plain white card with congratulations written in blue ink across the middle. No love, Mom, no explanation. It wasn't a gesture of reconciliation, just a statement of fact. I put it with the rest of the mail and forgot about it until today, when I cleaned out the kitchen drawer. Dad's name hasn't come up since. When people ask about my background, I talk about school or the first property I managed, or how I got into hospitality by accident. Sometimes, when I walk past the old family photos in the hallway, I don't stop. They're still there, but the faces look less familiar every month. I sleep through the night now. I don't dream about heated arguments or the sound of my mother's voice on the phone. I don't wait for anyone to call. The phone is silent most evenings, just the way I like it. If I feel anything, it's only quiet. That's enough. If your own father tried to claim everything you built just because he shares your last name, would you forgive him? I've gone back and forth about whether I should have given him another chance, or if there are lines family shouldn't cross. Maybe I'm colder than most, or maybe I just got tired of pretending blood means trust. I handled things in a way that felt fair to me, but I know some people would see it differently. Did I push too hard, or did he deserve to lose me after everything he did? I'm not looking for sympathy. I just want to know where you draw the line if it was your work, your name, and your future on the table. Let me know what you think, or if you've been through something close to this. If these kinds of stories help you see things clearer, feel free to share or stick around for more. In the end, I still wonder, when does loyalty become self-destruction, and who gets to decide?